Hello, my name is Abdulmati Asiri and I would like to welcome in another Boeing 737 video tutorial. Vertical bearing for me is which I consider one of my secret weapons in the past. So I'm giving you all the experience that I gathered on how to utilize vertical bearing through PMDG and then through the application in the real airplane. There are already 3 videos regarding vertical bearing in a playlist, and this is, as I said, the introduction to the vertical bearing. So the vertical bearing, as can be found here in the descent page in the FMC, will show you the angle to the waypoint indicated in this line at this altitude, and that is regardless of the LNAV or VNAV. It's just an advisory information. Whatever waypoint mentioned here, with whatever altitude here, it will automatically compute the angle from the airplane present position to that point, and then it will show you what vertical speed that you need to descend at now to be able to cross that waypoint at that altitude. And the flight path angle is the same as the flight path vector here in the BFD. So as you can see, because we are flying level, it is 0, and it should be indicating 0 as well in the FMC. Now in the real airplane, something will be always displayed here, but in PMDG I have to be in the active descent mode for it to show anything. I'm gonna go ahead and activate a descent now, and as you can see, it brought up a point with an altitude and immediately gave me the vertical bearing to that point and the vertical speed I need to cross that waypoint at that altitude. And because we are level, the flight path angle is 0. So by default, the FMC will display the first point in the legs page with any altitude restriction here. So if you go to the legs page, as you can see, none of these is a hard altitude except for this point, which is the initial approach fix for the approach. If any point before that had a hard altitude, it will be shown automatically, and we can demonstrate that by let's say putting here a hard altitude 230 or so in any of these points. Execute, and if I go to the descent page, as you can see now, show me the first point with an altitude restriction immediately displayed here. And since we are on the same level that is we are cruising at, the vertical bearing is 0. If I delete the altitude restriction here, it will sequence immediately to the next waypoint with an altitude restriction. So if I execute that, and again it sequences to the initial approach fix for the ILS. Now remember, this is only an advisory, so whatever changes you make here, it will not affect the VNAV or LNAV in any ways. So if I took any point from the legs page here, and let's say I like to know what is the vertical speed that I need to cross this point at 10,000 feet, for example. So if I put it here, it shows me that the vertical bearing is 4.0 degrees, which is a little bit steep, and the vertical speed I need to do is at least 2,900 feet, which is a lot. So one of the uses that I utilize this tool for is if ATC give me any altitude restriction en route, very close to a waypoint, I immediately take it in the scratch pad and put the altitude restriction, whatever ATC give me, and then I put it here in the descent page, and then I can gauge. If it is more than 3,000, then I'll advise ATC that I am unable to do that. And this is not the only way to gauge whether you can do the descent or not, but it is one more tool that you can utilize. And for me, it is much better than to change the altitude restriction here in the legs page and then wait for the FMC to compute a new VNAV path and then decide. And if you cannot make it, then you advise ATC that you cannot, and then you delete the altitude restriction again. So again, me personally, I prefer to try to minimize the changes that I do here in the altitude restriction and the speed in the legs page once I'm close to the top of descent. And I try to either do a mental math or utilize this advisory portion of the descent page in the FMC. And as you have noticed, any point I take here with an altitude restriction, let's say I took this with 11,000 and I put it here, the execute light does not illuminate. Again, this is just an advisory. It doesn't affect anything in the VNAV path or LNAV. And if I want to go back to the default, if I just put delete, then it will go back to whatever the logic that the FMC is using to display the waypoint. So for me personally, two uses for me is just to be able to tell whether I can cross a waypoint in the cruise or a cruise descent. And the second and most important for me, as you know, is using the runway. So for example, here we are landing runway 34 right. So I put runway 34 right with a slash. And now it depends on the FMC version that you have. If it is very old, more than 10 years, you need to check. So for the new versions of the FMC, you can just put the runway with a slash. And then if you put it here, the FMC will compute 50 feet above the touchdown zone elevation, and it will put the altitude here. And that is the crossing altitude over the threshold. And again, it will display immediately for you the vertical bearing and the vertical speed that you need to do now. That is regardless of the deceleration at 10,000 or even top speed. It's just giving you a direct angle to that point at that altitude and the vertical speed that you need to do now. So if you have an old version of the FMC and you put the runway with a slash only, it might give you a number that is not 50 feet above the touchdown zone elevation. If that is the case, then you need to enter it manually. So the touchdown zone for this runway is 72 feet, so 72 plus 50 is 122. So we'll enter here 10122. Now the FMC will round up the last digit, but we'll just enter it the exact number that we know. And as you can show, it's showing 120. So it's not a big difference. And again, you need to enter the altitude for the runway only if you are flying an airplane with an old FMC version. Otherwise, if you just put the runway with the slash, it will compute it. And it's a good idea just to verify that the FMC is having the 50 feet plus the touchdown zone, just to make sure. So just as a demonstration, let me take this point here and we'll put it, we need to cross at 15,000. Let's say that this was the instruction of ATC and I don't want to do any changes in the legs page. So I'll put it here and that will give me the vertical speed that I need to descend now to cross at 15,000. So if I elect to descend now, then I need to do at least 1,200 feet per minute, and then I need to keep an eye on the changes in the vertical bearing and the vertical speed and adjust it from there. It's a high load, but once you get used to monitoring these numbers and using them, it will make your life easier. I know it does for me. We'll go ahead here and put 15,000. And we see the vertical speed is a fine indication of the trend of the vertical bearing. If the vertical speed is increasing here, I know that the vertical bearing will eventually increase. If the vertical speed is decreasing, the vertical bearing eventually will decrease. And as you can see, the flight path angle is very close to the vertical bearing because we used a vertical speed that is close to what we have here. So it's just a constant modification. Again, it's a high workload in terms of the scan that you need to do. Of course, you need to keep an eye on your speed to make sure that your speed does not increase a lot. And again, it's one more technique that you can utilize if you like. If you are a big fan of level change, I am a big fan of level change most of the time to reduce the workload on myself. But in a situation like this, if I have only 1,200 feet per minute, then I'd rather go with vertical speed just to make the descent smoother. So that's it for the vertical bearing. Again, there are 3 more videos in addition to this, and there is a playlist for the vertical bearing. I suggest you take advantage of it. And if you have any techniques or any tips on using the vertical bearing, please do share it in the comment section. I really do appreciate that. So that's all for this video. Until next time, this is Abdulmati Asiri. Wish you safe flying and smooth landing. And if you have any questions, comments or concerns, please let me know. Thank you for watching.